All right, thank you. For those of you who haven't run across eAdventist before, it's the church membership software that's used all across North America. It was born right here in the North Pacific Union, and now it's used all around. And every church has at least 13 or more years of data in there. So just to give you some background. All right, so Jose approached me just a few months before the COVID did, and was asking, is there some way you can help us with diagnostics for our church? And so as I talked to the people who have experience with church vitality, they said that 3 things that are commonly used to assess church vitality is attendance, baptisms, and contributions. It's kind of like height, weight, blood pressure, pulse that you get taken at the doctor. It doesn't tell you everything, but they're great signals that there might be a problem or that things are going well. So we have all the baptisms for every church in North America going back at least 13 years. And in the North Pacific Union here, we've got them right back to 2000. Attendance. We've got a growing number of churches recording attendance on a regular basis. The North Pacific has done that more than any union. We've got 9 years where we've actually done a fairly rigorous study here. And that's where Jose was mentioning, we found that the lowest conferences in their lowest year, about 40% of the membership in attendance. Best conferences in the best years, just about 50. So right between 40 and 50. The contributions isn't collected anywhere in a central pool, so that's not available. We're putting a place in eAdventist so that you can enter those things like total tithes and total offerings for your church if you want, and conferences can load that data. So here's what we found. Here's the categories that Jose mentioned, so I won't take any more time on those. But just to picture it, plateauing, you've got a plus or minus 2%. If you've got a church of 100, all it takes is one family moving out or moving in to really push the needle up or down. So that's what that means. Declining really is a downward trend, growing really is an upward trend, and multiplying adds a plant. So just some quick definitions. When we say church, we're talking churches and companies. Baby churches as well as big churches. When we say baptisms, we mean baptisms or professions of faith. Any church that doesn't have attendance, we've used a conservative estimate of 40% of their membership. And when we say church plant, that's something that we call a group. So just so that you know, we've got almost half the churches now that are recording attendance. And I will have to say, after watching what's happened through COVID, a church that doesn't take attendance is kind of like a doctor that doesn't take any notes. You're getting care, but you just don't have the continuity and the history to know what's going on. So, church plants, thought you might find this encouraging. Over the last 5 years, the churches that have been planted, the ones that are still groups are blue. The ones that have graduated to company status are yellow. The ones that have graduated to church status are green. So there's growth in these church plants. It's only within a year or two that a lot of them are hitting company status. Any guess about the size of our church? I was a little surprised about this. We looked all across the division, so all the way from companies to churches. The mean church size is 187. As a geek, I feel like I should explain some of the mathematical terms to you here. No. So mean is we add them all up, we divide by the number. There might be no church that's 184, but it's the mathematical center. Median, we line them all up from smallest to largest, and we take the one in the center. So what that means is across North America, half of our churches and companies are smaller than 106, and half are bigger. And to help you picture that, on the left, the blue are the half that are smaller, the green are the half that are larger. 10% of our members are in those smaller churches. And that makes sense, right? The larger ones are large. And so that just kind of gives you a feel for the shape of our congregations all the way across the countries. And I discovered, looking back to 2010, that really hasn't changed. We've had about the same number in each group. That just kind of gives you an idea how they're spread across. There are a lot of churches in the 200 and up. So to put it another way, 1 out of every 10 of our members attends a very small church. 9 out of 10 go to one of these small, medium to large churches. Okay, so here's how we did. We applied baptisms and attendance. Jose mentioned age and natural church development. Those are clues. They're not anything that we used. So in 2017, about half of the churches in North America fell into the declining category, and about one third were in the growing category. So about a sixth in plateauing. And it turns out multiplying is a higher bar than some people might have expected. 33 churches made it in 2017. So here's 2017, 18, 19, boom. Not surprising, when you can't have church service, your attendance drops off rather precipitously. And when you have to space things out and only some people come, take this as a good sign. This means your blood pressure meter is telling you the truth. If this didn't drop, we wouldn't know that we had a problem. Our church is closed and everything looks normal. The churches that have been taking attendance are going to be able to track their recovery, whereas a church that hasn't taken attendance, you'll kind of be going by the feel, right? All right, so this is the NAD. Since I live in the North Pacific Union, in fact, I work at the North Pacific Union office, our leaders wanted to know, well, how are we doing? So here's the North Pacific Union. In 2017, we're a little higher than the North American Division average on declining. And we have about 1 in 4 churches that are growing. So there's 2017, 18, 19, and 20. All right. So we wanted to do a little bit more investigating. We've looked at this for individual conferences, and I won't take the time to dive into that yet, but some people speculated, I think if it wasn't for our Hispanic churches, we would not be growing at all, would we? So we wondered, and we took a look. So I separated out the Hispanic churches in the North Pacific Union from all the others. And of the Hispanic churches, 1 out of 3 is a growing church. Out of the others, it's about 1 out of 5. The good news is the Hispanic churches are not the only growing churches. And the news that was kind of sobering to our Hispanic leadership was 2 out of 3 Hispanic churches are in the plateauing and declining category. They are facing the same headwinds that other churches are. And so there's probably some value to sharing and talking on that. So 2020, you can see that it affected both. Then what I did, to help you kind of visualize this, the outside ring is all of the churches in the North Pacific Union. The center pie is just the Hispanic churches. So looking at this, while the Hispanic churches have a large percentage that are growing, you can see they are not even the majority of our growing churches in the North Pacific Union. We have a lot of other churches that are in the growing category. Something that surprised quite a few people, even leaders, that see this information regularly. And you can see that, again, the same thing applies in all those categories. We decided to look across the division and see how that went. And you can see almost half of the Hispanic churches across the division are in the growing category. But half of them are also struggling with the challenges of plateauing and declining. Most of our multiplying churches did come from the Hispanic church plants. And of course in 2020, it hit everybody. And here's that same pie. Across North America, the Hispanic churches are a significant component of our growth, But there are a lot of other healthy churches. Here's the other thing we found that was interesting. We've been looking at one-year snapshots, right, for this. So here's the North American division pre-pandemic, so that we at least get some semblance of normal, whatever normal was. When we look at 2 years in a row, the number of churches that hit multiplying 2 years in a row, it declined pretty rapidly. The other thing was the declining churches also shrunk. So what we're finding is our churches seem to kind of hover between a declining and a plateauing, or a growing and a plateauing. And one of the speculations is a lot of our churches, we have kind of a 2-year cycle of things that we do for evangelism, so that may contribute to it. When we did 3 years in a row, it really, really shrunk. So whatever we do, Jose might be getting his 17,000 to 19,000 steps this year. He might find that hard to do for 3 years in a row. That takes some real perseverance, and sometimes it's got things beyond your control. Here's something I thought you might find interesting. I spread each of the categories across the sizes of churches. So those tallest bars you see are the small churches. From 1 to 20, 21 to 99, and 100 to 199. In those small churches, you notice that every band has an almost equal declining, plateauing, and growing. The small churches seem to really struggle with declining. So we'll need to do some more looking, and it may even be hard to determine from up here, but are they declining because they're struggling because they're small, or are they small because they're declining? In a lot of cases, as we've looked, sometimes it's the result of the population you live in. Montana has a lot of declining churches. Montana has a lot of population, younger population, migrating to urban areas, and so there are just challenges that we know are happening. So here's the churches up to 900. And interestingly enough, our large churches, again, are across the spectrum, growing, plateauing, and declining. And when you get up to the really big ones, the 4,000s, the 6,000, we don't see as many that are growing. It does take a lot of baptisms to grow those churches, and a lot of them are actually centered around a college or a university. And so they're at the mercy of a lot of things. It's not like a regular church. And it's actually amazing that a good number of them are plateauing and not declining. There's the names of some of them if you recognize them. Almost all around a hospital or a school. Okay, a couple other things that I want to share with you. We have people, yeah. Yes. We're building this into eAdventist, and I've got most of the back end done. The front end isn't quite finished. So those of you who are conference leaders, if you would like this information for your conference, I will send you the division slides, your union, your conference, and I will send you a spreadsheet that lists all of your churches and the category they were in. Those of you who are at churches, pastors and leaders, we can let you see, we can show you yours, and it will be available in eAdventist. It's not meant to be an ESPN scoreboard, leaderboard. It is a diagnostic, so HIPAA type rules will apply. Your information is for you, for your diagnostic, and to you to use. So, since there are some other divisions, people from other divisions here, I'll fly through this. There's the NAD. So, if you're anybody here from Atlantic Union? Yes. Okay. So here's Atlantic Union 2017, 18, 19, and 20. Looks fairly typical. Anybody from Columbia Union? Yes. Really healthy number of growing churches there. and 2020 hit there. Lake Union, hey, welcome. There's 2017, 18, 19, 20. Mid-America, yes. 2017, 18, 19, and 20. Your declining area looks a lot like North Pacific Union, and we see that where there's large rural areas, there's a lot of small churches, and a lot of the small churches, as people are moving to larger areas, you've got some really healthy churches in your urban area, but your rural areas are shrinking. And I don't want you to get the understanding that people are dying spiritually in a plateauing or a declining church, right? People are being fed, people are being meeting the Lord in the declining church. It's just that the church itself is shrinking. There may be a symptom of something there, but take it that way. North Pacific, we have a few people from the North Pacific. You've already seen our numbers. Pacific Union? No? Oh, yes. Welcome. So there's 2017, 18, 19, and 20. Canada? Yes, DACO. Okay, 2017, 2018, 2019, and 2020. Southern Union? Okay, we'll fly through those. And the Southwestern Union. Yes, welcome. 2017, 18, 19, and 2020. And I have one last. When I look at this picture, the first thing that hit me was, wow, that was definitely not taken in the last year and a half. This is where we want to get back, right? Churches that are full, churches that are alive. And in 2020, our churches had to figure out how they were going to worship when they couldn't gather. And I wanted you to know that in addition to all the Zoom, YouTube Live, Facebook Live, Adventist giving and e-Adventist turned out to be very strong tools. Adventist giving allowed us to pass the plate. E-Adventist, whether you know it or not, in addition to being the membership tool, it also has an email list and a text messaging list. And we released the text messaging. It was in beta testing. When the lockdowns came, we said, oh, everybody needs it. And so it's available to your church at no cost. So if you need a text messaging list, and it piggybacks off of your member list. So email, text messaging. Just to give you an idea how that's taken off, the green line is the text messaging. As the pandemic hit, the email volume took off, but text messaging has turned out to be by far the best way to get in touch with your members. Originally it was sending the Zoom link. Now that people are still meeting, it's still a great way to say, hey, join us tomorrow. This is what's happening. If you didn't know already, e-Adventist, we just launched an app for members, a mobile-friendly app. Your church can use this. And in the initial version, it's an online church directory. There'll be increasingly tools that you can use for elders, for deacons, for different leaders, and for small groups to coordinate. Okay, so here's the numbers for growth. You can see, you don't have to be a data scientist to see that baptisms are getting harder to get as time goes on. We definitely fell off a cliff in 2020. The good news is, 2021, that's the first 3 quarters, we're coming back. I don't know if we'll be all the way back, but we're getting closer. And our net growth, so this is plus and minus taken into account, we're already just slightly in the black for this year overall. I told you about church size. This is kind of the way our churches look. We've got some very large ones and a lot of small ones. And there's the explanation of mean and median. You saw that before. Here's the distribution. And here's the last part I thought you might find interesting. I hear and read a lot of things about the age of members. We're graying. Some people say the average age in North America is 58. Some say 62, over 50. The problem is almost all of these are based on samples, right? That's like I sit down with 3 people in this room, ask them a question, and then tell you what the whole room is like. The trick is to pick the right 3 people, right? That's what they're doing. Most of the studies, they're being done well for studies, but every study is at the mercy of who they pick. And the way the studies have been done in the past, as I've contacted some of the people who have done it, they're also at the mercy of who decides to answer. And I have a feeling that it's some smaller churches that have chosen to answer, and possibly largely English-speaking churches that chose to answer. So it's a challenge everybody has when they're doing surveys. Fortunately, in eAdventist, we have birth dates recorded for 70% of the members. That's a large sample. Now, statistically speaking, that's what they call an accidental sample. They just happen to have numbers there. But we can still say something useful. So for the 30% that we don't know about, we're going to make the simplest possible assumption. We'll assume that they're pretty much the same spread as everybody else. So here's the way the ages break out across North America. We have fairly even representation from 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. And you can pretty much guess by dropping a line down the middle what the median age is. It's not 50. It's 48 right now. It's going up between 4 and 5 months every year. The country is going up by 2 and 3 months every year. So we're aging just a little ahead of the country. And just to give you perspective on this, the median age in Canada is 41. Median age in the United States as of last year was 38.4. However, that includes a lot of people who are under the age of 10. And we don't generally baptize a lot of people under the age of 10. So if you want a fairer comparison, take out 13% of the population, and it brings the median age, it's hard to nail it precisely, but it's closer to 42 or 43. So we're not as far over the median age as you would think. Now this is membership, this is not necessarily attendance. So as kids that get baptized move on and don't come back right away, just to give it a little bit of reality there. So, as you discover the challenge of multiply, and you discover what we have for church vitality, our sincere hope is that this is what it's going to bring in your church. We want you to thrive. It's not just Kaiser Permanente's slogan. We want to thrive here and help our communities thrive.